This year during the season of Lent, we are following Jesus to the cross, which is what typically we do during the season of Lent. But this year, in addition to following Jesus to the cross, we are remembering that in his journey toward the cross, he went through the upper room, where Jesus gathered with his disciples all around him on the eve of his death. We can't totally be sure what happened in that upper room, but whatever it was that happened made a big difference, didn't it? Maybe all of the difference. If the resurrection is where God did God's best work, and if the cross is where Jesus did his heroic best work, then I wonder if the upper room is where Jesus' disciples did their best work and became Jesus' apostles. The upper room is where that transformation, I think, began for those disciples. And they were changed somehow from followers to the leaders they would become. Those first seeds of something new were sown, all because they spent some time upstairs with Jesus. And so we will follow our emerging Lenten display above the baptistry and walk with Jesus and his disciples up the stairs and into that room that made such a difference. Upstairs rooms are like that, aren't they? They can make the difference. Things have a way of changing when we walk up the steps of the house, right? Now, I know not all of us live in homes that have 2 floors, for sure. And I know that speaking about homes with 2 floors eliminates all those homes that are more modest, and especially those people who have no home. But it still seems to me that when it comes to homes, in most all of our homes, no matter how they're designed, there is a downstairs way of being and an upstairs way of being, and that the two differ. I used to love and go when our family would go and visit our grandmother. We'd visit Granny's house in central Illinois, Decatur, the heartland, the breadbasket of the country. We would drive through soybean fields and grain elevators into the heart of the old part of the town of Decatur, between the city park where we would feed the ducks and the old college. Her home was early 20th century vintage, with glass drawer handles on the corner china cabinet, push-button light switches, and a built-in window seat in the front room where the games were stored underneath the bench that probably had been there since the last time we had visited. The front room downstairs in Granny's house is where we would visit. It was where we would set up the card table and play rummy and canasta. Granny with her oversized cards so she could see them. Diabetes is a tough disease. Downstairs was where we helped our Granny watch her daytime soap operas, All My Children, The Edge of Night. She called them her stories. And it was where, when the visit was over, all of us grandkids would line up around Granny's chair to give her a kiss. She didn't walk much anymore. That was the first floor. And then there was the stairway that went up to the second floor, up a half a flight, and then another flight up the stairs. But Granny had something in her home that some of you all may remember. I hadn't seen it, and still haven't seen it too often. She had a curtain on the landing of her home, of the stairway there. She had a curtain that clearly divided the first floor from the second floor. On the other side of that curtain, above the landing, the house, it took on a much different feel. Stairs led to bedrooms, and the bedrooms had furniture that was old and dark and kind of mysterious and creepy. Bookcases in the hallway had books that dated back to the turn turn of the century, Mark Twain books that looked like they came out of Mark Twain's personal collection, old yellow bindings and black and white pen and ink illustrations. Upstairs was where I encountered my very first laundry chute that went from the second floor all the way to the basement, and where I will have you know I did not take the bait when my cousins dared me to climb inside and tried to slide all the way down. There was the sunroom upstairs on the kind of off the master bedroom. The vanity there had all sorts of things that looked like they'd been there forever, things that I knew I shouldn't be touching and wondered whether I should even be seeing. You know what I mean. The downstairs was bright, the upstairs was dark. The downstairs was communal, the upstairs was personal. The downstairs was filled with voices, the upstairs was quiet, and it was filled with history, with the way life used to be. That's the way houses are. The downstairs is where we let the world have a glimpse of who we are. The upstairs, behind that curtain on the landing, is more for just us. It's a more honest space. Not too long ago, we were helping out a friend after she had lost the love of her life. Downstairs in her house is where all the sympathy cards were still stacked on the kitchen table. It's where there were still pictures from the display that was out at the viewing. Still flower arrangements that were kind of trying to hold their own, hanging in there. There was honor and memory and still some joy downstairs. But upstairs, where we were headed to do our work, is where the sense of loss still hung palpably in the air. Downstairs is where the kids' finger paintings are proudly displayed on the refrigerator. Upstairs is where the tough work of children learning to sleep through the night gets done. Upstairs is where we hear that faint voice, Mom? If we wake from a bad dream upstairs, it may not be until we get back downstairs and sit at the kitchen table for a minute, maybe in front of a cup of tea, before we can shake it off and come to our senses. Downstairs is where we're dressed and ready to go. Hey, where are my keys? Even though upstairs is where we wondered just 10 minutes earlier if that mole on our neck was getting bigger and should be checked out. We may be ready to conquer the world by the time we get downstairs, but upstairs is where we wonder about things. Where we wonder about things that are troubling, things that make us a little less sure of ourselves, things that could cause us to stumble, things that pierce the veneer of our downstairs self. In the gospel text that Byron read for us today, the disciples are having an upstairs moment with Jesus. Not the upper room yet, but on the way there for sure. Turns out two important things had happened downstairs in their lives that had shaken them up a little bit. Two things that were troubling his disciples. First, there was Pilate. Pilate, who is the guy we're going to hear a lot from in a few weeks. Pilate was the guy that Rome had chosen to maintain order over this far-reaching part of the empire. Pilate was cranky and mean. And it seems that Pilate's M.O. was to inflict random terror on people as a way of kind of keeping order, just to keep people on their toes. We can't be sure exactly what happened from Luke's explanation, but it seems to have had something to do with spilling the blood of some Galileans while they were at worship, of all things. That sounds all too familiar, doesn't it? So that had happened, an officially state-sponsored terrorist attack. And then there seems to have been an accident of some kind. The crash of a tower. There was a pool near Siloam, just outside of Jerusalem, where some people would gather to stave off the heat of the day, get their drinking water. Some people would come there to have ritual cleansing, and still others would make that pool where they would have their mikvah, or their ritual bath, giving birth, a rite that gave birth to our rite of baptism. Siloam, popular place. Anyway, Luke has Jesus talking about the crash of a tower into that pool, killing 18 people, many of whom were there for some kind of religious purpose. So there was tragedy and evil and tragedy in the faithful. These things had happened, and the faithful had been wondering, because they were among the casualties, what was up. So the disciples asked an upstairs question. Not a whole lot different from the one we ask when something terrible happens and good people are the ones to perish. Where was God when these things happened? Had those people who were killed done something to deserve their fate? Could God have intervened? If God could have intervened but didn't, what does that mean? What does that suggest? These are upstairs questions, aren't they? They aren't a whole lot different than the questions we ask after New Zealand or Charleston, or after the biopsy confirms our fears, or after the kids' erratic behavior escalates into regular tantrums. Those upstairs moments, those falling up moments we've talked about, when we're asked to reconcile our belief in an all-powerful God with our own pool of Siloam. While I was finishing this sermon yesterday, I took a Facebook break. Have any of y'all ever done that? It's so easy. And this meme, while I was finishing this sermon on this topic, this meme popped up from my cousin. The meme said this: do you ever wish God would just walk into your room and sit on your bed and be like, okay, this is what you should do? Or is that just me? No, it's not just you. It's all of us who are faced with the upstairs task of reconciling our messy, complicated, sometimes difficult life with what should I do, and with God. True to form, Jesus doesn't give an easy answer here to the question that was put to him: was God responsible for this calamity? Instead, he tells a story about a fig tree, an old craggly fig tree, a lousy old fig tree. Had no figs. The owner wanted to cut it down, but the gardener, he was the one who'd been watering it, checking the branches, taking care of the tree. The gardener instead said, give it one more year. One more year. Let's see what I can do. And so the fig tree received mercy. What does this story have to do with anything? I'm not sure. I know. Jesus often tells stories in response to questions that make everybody go, what? Except that the people came to Jesus with a question about God's wrath. And in response, Jesus offers a story about God's mercy. Maybe that's the good news for all of us fig trees out there who can sometimes feel so overwhelmed by what we don't have, by what we don't understand, and by how the world doesn't always play by the rules. Maybe it's good news for those of us who are prone to toss and turn in the upstairs part of our lives. Maybe. Now, once upon a time, we might have believed in a God who is called the man upstairs. I don't think we believe in that anymore, but I'm here to tell you this morning, I do believe in an upstairs God. And I think it's good news that the God who delights in our downstairs joy and celebration and rummy games is the same God who walks with us through the curtain, up the stairs, and stays with us through the night. And whose essential way with us when we are struggling with life's toughest questions is to show us mercy.